A 5 a.m. call, a trembling voice. Don't worry her. My grandson's words echoed. A simple request or a desperate warning. The bus stop waited. A familiar route, but nothing was familiar. A shockwave. The why? The phone rang precisely at 5 a.m. I know the time exactly, because I was already awake. The screen lit up in the dim light, displaying Jelani. My heart plummeted. My grandson doesn't call at 5 in the morning unless something is terribly wrong. I cleared my throat, trying to sound calm as I answered. Jelani, what's wrong, honey? His voice, usually so steady, was barely a whisper, frayed with a fear I'd never heard before. Grandma, he choked out, whatever you do, don't wear your... The words hung in the quiet air, a nonsensical command that struck a strange chord within me. I clutched the phone tighter, my knuckles. Why, Jelani? What are you talking about? The pause on his end stretched, heavy with unspoken dread, before he finally managed to respond, his voice trembling even more. You'll understand soon. Please, Grandma, just trust me. Then, the line went dead, leaving me in the silence with a new, unsettling chill. I sat there, the dead phone still pressed to my ear, the image of Jelani's name burning in my mind. 5 a.m. calls were reserved for emergencies, for news no one wanted to hear. His voice, that raw tremor, replayed in my head. What could possibly make him so afraid of my husband, warned then from years of comforting warmth? It held no secrets, no dangers, or so I thought. I tried to rationalize it, to dismiss it as a strange dream or a prank, but the fear in his voice was too real, too profound. I got up slowly, the old house creaking around me, and walked to the closet, staring at the familiar splash of scarlet hanging there. It looked innocent, almost inviting, but now it carried a new, ominous weight. The morning passed in a blur of unease. I went through the motions of making coffee and toast, but the food tasted like ash, and the warmth of the mug couldn't chase away the cold knot in my stomach. The tea now felt like a forbidden object. I chose my worn gray cardigan instead, a dull, unremarkable garment that offered no comfort, only a sense of reluctant obedience. Every minute felt stretched, each tick of the clock amplifying the suspense. As 9 o'clock approached, my resolve hardened. I needed to understand. Jelani's fear was palpable, and I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed my purse, the weight of the unknown heavier than any burden I'd carried in years. Stepping out into the crisp morning air, I pulled my gray cardigan tighter, the chill seeping into my bones. The walk to the bus stop felt longer than usual, each step filled with a growing sense of foreboding. The neighborhood was quiet, the usual morning bustle muted, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. My mind raced, trying to conjure explanations for Jelani's strange warning, but nothing made sense. As I rounded the final corner, the bus stop came into view. My breath caught in my throat. I stopped dead, my feet rooted to the pavement. A wave of ice-cold dread washed over me, silencing every thought, every question. What I saw there, laid out for all the world to witness, was a sight that sent a shockwave through me, confirming Jelani's terrible, desperate premonition. Imani froze, her gaze locked on the sight before her. Not a person, but an object unmistakable in its vivid hue. There, crumpled on the cold, damp bench of the bus stop, lay her. It was not merely discarded. It was torn along one sleeve, a jagged rip exposing the dull lining beneath. A chill colder than the morning air seeped into Imani's bones, a horrifying confirmation of Jelani's frantic warning. She stumbled forward, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, her mind reeling with a terrifying question. If the coat was here, torn and abandoned, where was Jelani? And what had happened here? A wave of nausea washed over her as she reached for the damaged garment, the fabric cold and lifeless beneath her trembling fingers. The quiet streets suddenly felt menacing, every shadow a potential threat. Every sound amplified by her rising panic. Imani snatched up the coat, clutching it to her chest as if its warmth could somehow bring Jelani back, or at least offer an explanation. Her phone felt heavy in her hand as she scrolled to Jelani's contact, her thumb hovering over the call button. What would she even say? Your warning was right, honey. Your grandmother's coat is here, but you aren't? Her mind raced, replaying every detail of his whispered plea, the raw fear in his voice. She had to find him. But where to start? The bus stop offered no clues, no witnesses, just the cold, silent testament of the damaged coat. She looked around, her panic rising with each passing moment of uncertainty. She felt utterly alone, the city a vast, uncaring entity, with no immediate answers at the bus stop, and Mamie's instincts pulled her towards Jelany's apartment. It was a 20-minute bus ride, but walking felt impossible, her legs heavy with dread. Boarding the next bus, she tried to compose herself, but her mind was a whirlwind of terrifying scenarios. What if he was hurt? What if he was in trouble? Her grandson, so full of life and promise, now felt incredibly vulnerable. She remembered his intense desire to protect her, a trait she cherished but now feared had put him in harm's way. "Please, Jelany," she whispered under her breath, her voice thick with unvoiced prayers. "Just be safe." The bus rattled along, each stop feeling like an eternity, bringing her closer to potential answers or perhaps more harrowing questions that she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Arriving at Jelany's building, Imani practically ran to his apartment door, her heart hammering. She knocked, then pounded, her calls of "Jelany? Honey, are you there?" echoing in the silent hallway. No answer. A cold dread seeped into her, confirming her worst fears. She fumbled in her purse for the spare key he'd given her months ago, her fingers clumsy with anxiety. The lock clicked, and she pushed the door open, her breath catching. The apartment was quiet, unnervingly so. Everything seemed in place, yet a subtle disarray hinted at a hasty departure, a drawer half open, a chair slightly askew. On his desk, amidst scattered papers, she spotted a small, folded note, an urgent message hastily scrawled in Jelany's familiar handwriting. Imani's fingers trembled as she unfolded the small note, her heart thudding against her ribs. Jelany's familiar, slightly hurried script filled the paper, a stark contrast to the quiet dread that now permeated his apartment. "Grandma," it read, "I know this sounds crazy, but you have to go to the old oak tree in Miller's Park. There's something important hidden beneath the roots, exactly where we buried that time capsule when I was 7. Don't tell anyone. Trust no one but me. If you don't hear from me by sundown, go to Aunt Clara's. She knows what to do." The words swam before her. Her grandson, usually so calm and rational, was clearly in deep trouble, and he was asking her to step into the unknown. A cold wave of fear washed over her, mingled with a fierce resolve. She had to find him. Imani clutched the note, its edges sharp against her palm. "Trust no one." The words echoed in her mind, raising a storm of questions. Who was Jelany hiding from? What had he gotten himself into? Her first instinct was to call the police, to scream for help, but his plea to trust no one stopped her cold. If he was in danger, calling the authorities without understanding the full picture could make things worse. She thought of Aunt Clara, her sister, who had always been a rock of common sense. But Jelany's instruction was clear, only if she didn't hear from him by sundown. She had to follow his instructions, however bizarre they seemed. This was her grandson, her flesh and blood, and she would move heaven and earth to ensure his safety. Her gaze hardened. She would go to Miller's Park. The walk to Miller's Park felt both too long and too short. Each step brought her closer to answers, or perhaps to more danger. The park was relatively empty, a few early morning joggers and dog walkers barely noticing her hurried pace. She navigated the winding paths, the old oak tree. She remembered it vividly, its sprawling branches a natural canopy for their childhood adventures. They had buried a small metal box there, filled with trinkets and notes, a childish promise of a future reunion. Finding the exact spot, however, proved more challenging than her memory suggested. The roots had grown, intertwining and expanding, obscuring the precise location of their long-forgotten treasure. Her heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and dread as she began to search. carefully pushing aside fallen leaves and loose soil. After several tense minutes of digging with her bare hands, Imani's fingers brushed against something hard and metallic buried just beneath the surface. Her breath hitched. It was not the small, rusted time capsule from her childhood, but a sleek, modern smartphone, clearly not her own or Jelani's current model. It was cold to the touch and surprisingly heavy. As she pulled it free from the DAMP earth, she noticed a crack across the screen and a small, distinctive symbol etched onto its back, a stylized raven. Her heart hammered, not just from the exertion, but from the sudden, chilling realization that this was no ordinary phone. It felt like a piece of a puzzle she didn't want to solve, a direct link to the danger Jelani was facing. As she stared at the raven symbol, a twig snapped loudly behind her, shattering the park's fragile silence and sending a jolt of pure terror through her. Imani's heart leaped into her throat as the twig snapped. She spun around, the cold smartphone clutched tightly in her hand. A squirrel chattered indignantly from a nearby branch, its bushy tail flicking, before scampering away. Relief washed over her, quickly replaced by renewed tension. Her nerves were frayed, every shadow a potential threat, every sound a warning. She scanned the area one last time, making sure she was truly alone before turning her attention back to the device in her hand. The stylized raven on its back seemed to stare back at her, a silent, ominous sentinel. This phone was not a mistake. It was a deliberate message, and she needed to understand what it meant. She had to be careful, hyper-aware of her surroundings, still kneeling by the oak tree. Imani examined the mysterious smartphone. The crack on the screen spiderwebbed across one corner, but otherwise it seemed intact. She pressed the power button, her breath held tight. The screen flickered to life, revealing a lock screen with a simple, stark image, a single large. Her heart pounded harder. This wasn't a coincidence. She tried swiping, tapping, but it remained locked. Then she noticed a small, almost invisible notch on the side. Curiosity overriding her caution, she pressed it. The screen changed, displaying a single input field and the words password blinking. A wave of frustration and desperation washed over her. She knew Jelani's usual passwords, but this felt different, more cryptic. A puzzle meant only for him. Imani sighed, a tremor running through her. What does that mean, Jelani? She whispered to herself. She tried various dates, names, anything that might connect to Nothing worked. The password prompt remained, mocking her efforts. She thought of Jelani's note, trust no one but me. That meant no one could help her with this. But then she remembered the last part. If you don't hear from me by sundown, go to Aunt Clara's. She knows what to do. Perhaps Clara would know something about it. It was a long shot, but she was out of options. She had to try. Standing up slowly, her knees stiff, she decided. Aunt Clara's house was her next destination, but first, she needed to be absolutely sure no one was following her. Imani began her journey to Aunt Clara's, taking a circuitous route, constantly checking over her shoulder. The city felt different now, every passing car, every pedestrian, a potential pair of. She reached Clara Street, a quiet residential lane lined with familiar, well-kept homes. As she approached the quaint, it was coming from the small shed where Clara kept her gardening tools. A figure was inside, their silhouette visible through the grimy window, rummaging through something. Imani's heart leaped. Could it be Clara? Or someone else? Her hand tightened around the smartphone, its cold weight a stark reminder of Jelani's warning. As she drew closer, she recognized the unmistakable flash of crimson. It was her own hook inside the shed, swaying gently as the figure moved. Imani's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the unsettling silence of Clara's backyard. The sight of her own ermine, her worst fears were far from over. As she crept closer to the shed, silhouette inside shifted, revealing not Clara's familiar ample frame, but a leaner, more agile figure. Imani pressed herself against the fence, the cold smartphone heavy and menacing in her hand, her mind racing to process this new, terrifying development. She strained to hear what the figure was doing, a low rustling sound indicating they were still searching through Clara's gardening supplies, perhaps looking for something specific. A wave of ice-cold dread washed over her. Who was this person, and what did they want with her sister's shed, and more importantly, with her coat? The thought of Clara being in danger propelled Imani forward, a surge of protective anger overriding her fear. She knew she had to act, but every instinct screamed caution. Taking a deep breath, Imani stepped into the shed's doorway, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Who are you? What are you doing in my sister's shed?" The figure inside froze, then slowly turned. It was a young woman, her face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, but Imani caught a glimpse of intense, searching. The woman didn't answer directly, instead gesturing vaguely towards the torn. "You're Jelani's grandmother, aren't you?" He left. "A message." Her voice was low, hushed, almost conspiratorial. Imani's grip tightened on the smartphone hidden in her pocket. "What message? Where is Jelani? And what do you have to do with this?" The young woman sighed, a sound heavy with exhaustion. "He told me to wait here. He said if you came, you'd understand, and that you'd have the device." She looked pointedly at Imani's pocket. Imani's stomach churned. How did this stranger know about the phone? Imani hesitated, weighing her options. This woman knew about the phone, and she spoke of Jelani. Was she a friend or another piece of the puzzle that was now threatening her family? She slowly pulled out the mysterious smartphone, its raven symbol catching the dim light. What is this? And what does Jelani want me to do with it? The young woman's agency? In their depths. He said to tell you the raven flies at dawn. It's the key. He's counting on you, Imani. Before Imani could ask for clarification, a distant siren wailed, growing louder. The young woman's head snapped up, her demeanor instantly shifting from cautious to alarmed. "They're here. You have to go now. Don't let them get the phone." She pushed past Imani, vanishing into Clara's backyard as quickly as she had appeared. Leaving Imani alone with the ringing siren and the cryptic words, the siren grew impossibly loud, its wail echoing through the quiet street, closer than Imani had anticipated. Panic flared in her chest. Who were they? And why were they after this phone? She scrambled out of the shed, clutching the phone tightly. The young woman was gone, leaving no trace. Imani knew she couldn't stay. If the siren was for the young woman, she would be caught in the crossfire. Remembering Jelani's instruction, trust no one, she knew she couldn't even go into Clara's house to wait. She had to flee, to find a place where she could figure out what the raven flies at dawn meant. As she rounded the corner of the house, heading towards the back alley, a police car screeched to a halt at the front of Clara's property. Lights flashing and two officers quickly exited, their gazes sweeping the area. Imani froze, hidden just out of sight, her heart pounding a desperate rhythm. She had seconds, maybe less, before they spotted her. Imani's heart pounded, each beat echoing the blaring siren. The uniformed officers were already at Clara's front door, their voices sharp and commanding, cutting through the quiet afternoon air. She knew she couldn't be seen here, not with the mysterious phone in her hand, a beacon of incriminating evidence. Her mind raced, remembering the layout of Clara's backyard, the overgrown bush that led to a narrow service alley, a potential escape route. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed through a gap in the brutal wooden fence, thorny branches scratching at her worn gray cardigan and catching in her. She didn't dare look back, her only thought to put as much distance as possible between herself and the escalating chaos at her sister's house. The alley was dark and smelled of damp earth and discarded refuse, a welcome anonymity compared to the glaring police lights that now bathed the front yard in pulsing. She stumbled once, catching herself against a rusty dumpster, the cold, grimy metal jarring her back to the grim reality of her situation. She was alone on the run, and carrying a secret that seemed to grow heavier with every frantic step, pulling her deeper into a world she didn't understand. She had to find a quiet place to think, To process Jelany's cryptic messages and the sudden threat, she kept moving, her legs aching and her breath ragged until the sounds of the sirens finally faded into the distant urban hum. The afternoon had worn on, and now the beginnings of rush hour stirred the streets around her. She found herself on a bustling thoroughfare, needing a place to think, somewhere discreet and public where she wouldn't draw attention. Her gaze landed on a small, independent coffee shop with steamed-up windows, a haven of warmth and activity. Slipping inside, she ordered a plain yet warm mug, seeking comfort in its familiar heat. The gentle murmur of conversation and the rich aroma of brewing coffee offered a fleeting sense of normalcy. But her mind was anything but calm, churning with fear and unanswered questions. She found a secluded corner table and pulled out the smartphone, its cracked screen now feeling like a direct window into Jelany's desperate world. "The raven flies at dawn," she whispered to herself, the words tasting strange and foreign as she tried to make sense of the cryptic clue, her gaze fixed on the blinking password prompt. Every possible combination played out in her head, each one failing to unlock the device. Imani stared at the glowing screen, her mind racing, a frantic whirlwind of possibilities. The raven flies at dawn. Dawn, the very time Jelany had first called her, his voice laced with terror. Raven, the distinctive symbol etched onto the back of this very phone. Could it be a simple numerical representation, a date, a time? She thought of flight, of birds, of the specific early morning hour. Slowly, an idea began to form, a thread connecting the disparate pieces. She tried typing in 5, then 00 for the hour, then raven in capital letters, then dawn. No, that was far too long for a password. She quickly tried raven 5 a.m. Still nothing, just the persistent, mocking password prompt. Her fingers hovered, poised over the digital keyboard, her brow furrowed in concentration. What if flies referred to freedom or escape or even a time-sensitive event? She thought again of that early morning call. 5 a.m. Could the raven be a name, a code, a specific word? Her, raven, and dawn were words, but 5 a.m. was a specific time stamp. She carefully typed raven dawn 5 a.m. The screen instantly changed, displaying not a menu of apps, but a single urgent video message. Jelany's face, haggard and anxious, filled the screen, his voice an urgent whisper. "Grandma, if you're seeing this, it means I couldn't reach you. They're on to us. This phone contains everything. Find the nest. Only you can stop them." Jelany's whispered words, "Find the nest," echoed in Imani's ears. A new, daunting directive added to the growing list of mysteries. She tried to replay the video, hoping for more clues, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a single, encrypted file icon prominently labeled nest_loc.enc. Below it was a brief, unsettling text-based message. Coordinates expire in 3 hours. Seek the highest point. Imani's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. 3 hours. The clock was ticking, a relentless countdown. She cautiously tapped the encrypted file and a detailed map materialized, highlighting a specific, unfamiliar location on the desolate outskirts of the city. It wasn't a park or a bustling residential area, but what looked like an abandoned industrial complex, dominated by a towering, disused water tower reaching into the sky. The urgency in Jelany's voice, the ticking clock on the coordinates, and the eerie image of the isolated tower sent a fresh wave of cold dread through her. She knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she had to go, and she had to go now despite the immense danger. As she stood up, gathering her purse and preparing to leave the cafe, a heavy hand suddenly clamped down on her shoulder from behind, making her gasp. Imani gasped, her heart leaping into her throat as the heavy hand clamped down on her shoulder. She instinctively tensed, ready to fight, but a familiar, hushed voice whispered in her ear, "Don't scream." "Imani, it's me." She spun around to face the young woman from Clara's shed, her face now partially visible beneath the brim of her hat, her intense. The young woman quickly pulled Imani away from the table and towards the back exit, her movements swift and purposeful. "We need to go now," she urged, glancing nervously towards the cafe's front entrance. "The police were at Clara's. I saw them. They're looking for something, and it's probably this phone." Imani's mind raced, a mixture of fear and reluctant relief washing over her. This woman, a stranger, seemed to be an ally, at least for now. "How did you find me?" Imani managed to ask, her voice still trembling. "Jelani told me where you might go," the young woman replied, her grip firm as she guided Imani through a service door into a narrow, bustling alleyway. "He said you were resourceful. Out in a grimy alley, surrounded by overflowing dumpsters and the distant hum of city traffic." The young woman finally stopped, pulling off her hat to reveal a determined face. "My name is Lena," she introduced herself, her voice still urgent but calmer. "Jelani and I work together. He knew they'd be after the phone, and he figured you'd go somewhere public but secluded to try and figure it out." Imani studied Lena, her initial distrust warring with the overwhelming sense of urgency. "The nest?" Imani questioned, holding up the smartphone. "What is it? And what does seek the highest point mean?" Lena nodded gravely. "It's where Jelani keeps his research, his data. Everything he's uncovered about ... them." She gestured vaguely. "The highest point. It's a structural clue for the water tower specifically. There's a hidden compartment at the very top, designed for emergencies." Imani felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Jelani had prepared for this. "We only have 3 hours," Imani stated, her voice trembling slightly. "How do we get there?" Lena looked up and down the alley, a plan already forming in her. "We need to blend in and move fast." Lena quickly hailed a rideshare, instructing the driver to take them to a busy bus terminal on the opposite side of town, a deliberate detour to throw off any potential tails. Inside the car, the silence was thick with unspoken tension, broken only by Lena's occasional furtive glances out the window. "Jelani trusts you completely, Imani," Lena said, breaking the quiet. "He said you're the only one who could understand the raving clue." Imani looked at the smartphone, its cracked screen now a window into a dangerous world. "What exactly has Jelani uncovered?" she pressed, needing to understand the depth of this threat. Lena hesitated, her gaze distant. "Corruption. High level. It involves a surveillance program, using data from ordinary citizens." Jelani stumbled onto proof they're targeting specific individuals, silencing dissent. A chill ran down Imani's spine. This was far bigger than she could have imagined. And the bearing her grandson's frantic warning. Lena's, it was a signal, a warning for them. He knew they'd be looking for it. A distraction. The ride ended at the bustling terminal, and they quickly transferred to another bus. Opting for the slowest route towards the industrial outskirts, a deliberate move to appear less suspicious. As the bus lumbered past the city limits, the landscape shifted from vibrant urban sprawl to desolate. Decaying factories and abandoned warehouses, the sky overhead a bruised. Imani's gaze fixed on the looming silhouette of the water tower, its rusted metal stretching like a skeletal finger towards the heavens. "That's it," Lena murmured, pointing. "The highest point." They disembarked at a deserted stop, the only sounds the creak of the bus pulling away and the mournful whine of the wind through broken windows. The nest's location on the phone indicated a specific access point at the base of the tower. As they approached the heavy, rusted gate, Lena noticed something that made her freeze, her breath catching. A fresh, almost imperceptible scratch on the lock and a faint, lingering scent of ozone. "Someone," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind, "was here." "Very recently,"